It starts as a sound, a low growl deep inside the wall, and then a roar like a freight train passing right through your living room or a jet engine sitting on your roof. The stovepipe begins to shudder, the metal ticks and pops as it swells with a heat it was never built to hold. And if you step out into the cold and look up at your own chimney, you will see a thing you will never forget. A column of orange flame and spark shooting straight up into the dark, 10, 15 feet above the roof line like a great torch lit on top of your house. That is a chimney fire. In this country, there are around 25,000 of them every single year. They burn homes to the ground. They kill people in their sleep. And nearly every one of them was preventable. My name is Elias Yoder. I am Amish and I farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. I have heated this house with wood my whole life, and my father before me and his father before him. We have never had a chimney fire on this place, not once in over 100 years of burning wood through hard Pennsylvania winters. Today, I want to show you how we keep it that way, and I want to tell you about a trick that costs about $1 that almost nobody talks about anymore. But I am going to be honest with you right at the start, the way I always am, because this one matters more than most. The title says a $1 trick, and that part is true. There is a cheap thing you can do that genuinely helps, but I will not let you walk away believing that a dollar box of anything makes you safe forever, that you can throw away your brush and never look up your chimney again. That would be a lie. And with a chimney fire, a lie can cost a man his house and the people sleeping under its roof. So I am going to give you the cheap trick. I'm going to tell you plainly what it does and what it does not do. And I am going to show you the free habits that matter even more than the dollar. Honest is better than impressive. Stay with me. Let me start with what actually causes a chimney fire, because once you understand it, everything else makes plain sense, and you will never look at your wood stove the same way again. When wood burns, it does not all turn into clean flame and ash. Some of it goes up the chimney as smoke, and that smoke is full of unburned bits, tiny droplets of tar, water vapor, and little specks of soot, all riding up the pipe together. Now, the top of your chimney is cold, especially on a winter night. So when that warm, dirty smoke rises up and meets the cold inner walls of the flue, it does the very same thing your breath does on a cold window pane. It condenses, it sticks, and what it leaves behind, coating the inside of your chimney, is a dark, sticky, tar-like substance the old folks call creosote. Here's the thing you must understand about creosote. It is not just dirt, it is fuel. In plain terms, it is concentrated burnable tar, and it builds up layer on layer, week after week, all winter long, lining the inside of your chimney like grease lining a dirty pipe. A little is normal and harmless, but let it build thick enough, and one day, when you have a good hot fire going and a flame or a spark reaches up into that flue, the creosote itself catches. And when it catches, it does not burn gently. It burns like rocket fuel, thousands of degrees, roaring, feeding on itself all the way up the pipe. That is the freight train sound. That is the torch on the roof. Your chimney has become a flue packed full of burning tar. Now, the old sweeps will tell you there are really 3 stages of this stuff, and it helps to know them. The first stage is light and flaky, almost like black soot or dry ash, and it brushes off easy as anything. That is the kind you want because it is simple to clean. The second stage is harder, more like crunchy black flakes and bits of tar stuck on tighter. And the third stage, the dangerous one, is what they call glazed creosote. It is a shiny, hard, baked-on coating like black glass or hardened tar, and it is the most flammable of all and the very hardest to remove. A brush will barely touch glazed creosote. The whole point of everything I'm about to tell you is to keep you in that first easy stage and never, ever let it cook down into the third. And here is what makes the creosote build up fast and thick. And this is the part that puts most folks in danger without them ever knowing it. 2 things. The first is burning wet wood. Wood that has not been dried, what we call green or unseasoned wood, is full of water. When you burn it, a great deal of the fire's heat goes just to boiling off that water instead of making a clean, hot flame. The fire burns cool and smoky, and a cool, smoky fire is a creosote factory. It sends far more of that unburned tar up the pipe than a hot fire ever would. The second thing is starving the fire down to a slow smolder. A lot of folks, to make a fire last all night, will pack the stove full and then close the air down almost all the way, choking it into a low, lazy, smoldering burn. It feels thrifty. It feels clever. But that slow, oxygen-starved, smoky smolder is the very worst thing you can do, because it throws creosote up your chimney all night long while you sleep peaceful in your bed. Cool and smoky builds creosote. Hot and bright burns clean. Hold on to that, because it is the heart of everything. There is one more thing worth knowing here, because it explains why some houses get chimney fires and the neighbor's house never does. A chimney that runs up the outside wall of the house, exposed to the cold winter air on all sides, stays much colder than a chimney that runs up through the middle of the house. And a colder flue means the smoke condenses faster and the creosote builds heavier. So if you have an outside chimney, you are fighting a harder battle and you need to be more careful, not less. Burn hotter, clean more often, and watch it closer. Now, here is the cheap trick, the dollar trick. The one the old timers knew and most folks today have never even heard of. It is salt, common salt. The same plain sodium chloride you can buy in a box at any grocery store for about $1, or rock salt, or the coarse salt you would throw on icy steps. That is the dollar. That is the whole cost. Here's how the old folks used it. Every so often, when they had a good hot fire going, they would toss a small handful of salt right onto the hot coals and the flames. Not a great pile of it, a handful. The way my grandfather explained it to me, the salt riding up with the heat helps keep that creosote from baking down into the hard, glassy, glazed kind, and helps what does build stay drier and more flaky, so that more of it loosens and falls on its own instead of clinging hard to the walls. It rides the heat up the flue and does a little quiet work on the tar that is already there. The habit is old as the hills. Salt has been precious to people for thousands of years, used to keep meat, to tan hides, to scour pots. And yes, country folk who heated with wood and coal kept a tin of it by the stove and threw a handful in now and again as a matter of plain routine. They did not have a fancy name for the chemistry. They just knew the stove that got its handful of salt seemed to give them less trouble, and the knowledge passed down hand to hand the way all the old knowledge did. Now I have to stop and be very honest with you, more honest than the breathless videos will be, because your safety hangs on it. The salt is a helper. It is not a miracle, and it is not a substitute for a brush. I will not stand here and tell you that a handful of salt dissolves a whole winter of hard creosote and leaves your chimney clean as new, because it does not. And any man who tells you so is going to get somebody hurt. What the salt does is help slow the buildup and help keep what builds from baking into the most dangerous glazed form. It is a good, cheap habit that works alongside the real work. It is not the real work by itself. The dollar is real. The never having to clean it again part is a lie. You hold both of those in your mind at the same time, because here is the truth, and it is the part that is actually free and matters even more than the salt. The very best thing you can do to stop a chimney fire does not cost $1. It costs nothing at all. It is simply how you burn. Burn dry wood, seasoned wood, split and stacked up off the ground, under cover, with the air moving through it for a good long while. A year for most hardwoods, sometimes 2, so the water has truly left it. You can knock 2 pieces of dry wood together and hear a high, hollow, ringing knock. That is the sound of dry wood. A dull, heavy thud is the sound of wet wood, and wet wood is the enemy. Dry wood burns hot and clean and sends almost nothing up the pipe to stick. And burn hot, not smoldering, Build a bright, lively fire and give it air to breathe. Do not choke it down to a slow, miserable smolder to stretch it through the night. I know that is the temptation, and I know the old habit of it. But a hot, bright fire actually burns up most of those tar gases before they ever leave the firebox. So they go up the chimney as clean flame instead of sticking to your flue as fuel for a fire to come. If you want a longer burn, use bigger pieces of good dry hardwood and keep the air open enough to hold real flame, not a smoke-choked smolder. A hot fire is a clean chimney every single time, and here is a small free habit worth more than gold. Once a day, or at the very least every few days, let your fire burn good and hot and hard for 15 or 20 minutes. A nice bright blaze with the air open. That hot spell helps dry out and break loose the light creosote in the lower pipe before it ever has a chance to build up thick. Many a careful wood burner does exactly this every single morning and never once thinks of it as a trick. But it is one of the best there is. While we are up on the roof in our minds, let me give you one more cheap thing that earns its keep: a chimney cap. It is a simple metal hood with a screen that sits on top of your flue. It does 3 jobs at once. It keeps the rain out, and rain is no friend of yours because water mixing with creosote makes a worse mess and rusts your metal and eats your masonry. It keeps the birds and the squirrels and their nests out, and a flue blocked by a nest will push smoke and deadly gas back down into your home. And the screen on it catches sparks flying up out of the chimney so they do not land on your dry roof or your yard. A good cap runs a modest sum and lasts for years. It is worth every penny. Now, the salt helps, the dry wood helps, the hot fire helps, the cap helps, and you still must look. This is the one I will not let you skip, no matter how good your habits are. You must inspect your chimney, and you must clean it at least once a year before the burning season begins. And for a hard burning household, more often than that, you check the inside of that flue with your own eyes. You do not need to pay a great deal for this, though there is no shame at all in hiring a good chimney sweep. For a tall or a complicated chimney, or if you are not sure of yourself, a professional is cheap insurance against losing your whole house, but a careful person of ordinary sense can learn to do it himself. A chimney brush sized to fit your flue and a few rods to push it along runs you $30 or $40 and lasts the rest of your life. You run that brush up and down the flue on a cold stove with the firebox blocked off so the soot does not come into the room, and you scrub the creosote loose so it falls down to where you can sweep it out. You do that once a year at the very least, and you look up there with a good light and a small mirror to see how fast it is building. Here is the simple rule the old sweeps go by. If you look up your flue and see creosote built up about as thick as a coin, 1/8 of an inch or so, it is time to clean it. Any thicker than that, and you are burning on borrowed time. Look, and you will know the man who looks is never surprised. The man who never looks is the one standing out in his yard in his night clothes, watching the orange torch roar on his roof, and put in a smoke alarm, and put in a carbon monoxide alarm, and keep good batteries in both, because a wood stove can harm you 2 ways, by the fire and by the unseen gas, and those 2 cheap alarms have saved more lives than I could ever count. I will not show you any wood heat method without saying that plainly. And let me give you one more honest word, the hard one. If you ever do hear that roar, if a chimney fire ever does start in your home, get everyone out of the house first, every time. People before property, no exceptions. Then call the fire department. If you can do it quickly and safely, shutting the stove's air down and closing the damper starves the fire of oxygen and can slow it. And some careful folks keep a chimney fire suppressant flare on hand for just such a moment. But none of that comes before getting your family out the door and the firemen on the way. A house can be rebuilt. Your people cannot. Out first, always. Now, I want to take a moment because this is the part that matters, and it is bigger than a box of salt. Think on how strange it is that almost nobody is taught any of this anymore. 150 years ago, every family that heated with wood, which was nearly every family there was, knew this in their bones. They knew dry wood from green by the sound of it. They knew never to smolder a fire down to nothing. They threw their handful of salt and ran their brush and looked up the flue every fall as natural as breathing. It was just ordinary knowledge, the kind a child soaked up by helping his father at the stove. And then the furnace came, and the gas line, and the oil truck, and most folks stopped burning wood altogether. And in 2 short generations, the knowledge simply fell out of the family. It was not hidden by villains. There is no conspiracy in this one. It is quieter and almost sadder than that. It is just that when a skill stops being needed every day, it stops being passed down, and a thing that everyone once knew becomes a thing almost nobody knows. The knowledge did not die because it was wrong. It died because the thermostat made it feel unnecessary right up until the power goes out in an ice storm, or the price of heat climbs too high, or a young family decides to put a wood stove back into the house, and there they stand, burning wood with not one scrap of the old wisdom about how to do it safely. And there is this much too. There is good money in selling a man a fancy creosote removing log, or a bottle of treatment, or a yearly service contract. There is no money at all in telling that same man that a $1 box of salt, dry wood, a hot fire, and a $40 brush he runs once a year will keep him safe for the rest of his life. So the cheap, simple, true knowledge does not get advertised, and the costly branded version gets the good shelf space up front. That is not wickedness. It is just how the money flows, the same as everything else I show you on this channel. The salt has sat on the grocery shelf for $1 the whole time. Most folks have just never been told what their great-grandfather did with it. So here is what I want you to do this week before the next cold snap comes. First, go look hard at your wood pile and be honest about it. Is that wood truly dry, a year or more split and stacked under cover? Knock 2 pieces together and listen. If it thuds heavy and dull, you are burning your way toward a chimney fire, and you need to get yourself some properly seasoned wood. Second, change how you burn. No more choking the fire down to a smolder all night. Burn it bright and hot, and let it roar good and hot for a spell once each day. Third, get a box of plain salt, set it right by the stove, and toss a small handful onto a hot fire now and again, the way the old folks did. A cheap, good habit. No more and no less than that. And fourth, the one that matters most of all, before this season truly gets going, get a brush or get a good sweep and clean and look up that flue 1/8 of an inch, and it is time, and put a fresh battery in your smoke alarm tonight before you go to bed. Do those things and you will have done exactly what my family has done for over 100 years, to burn wood through the very hardest winters and never once stand out in the yard watching the roof. Tell me in the comments below, do you heat with wood, and have you ever had a chimney fire or known somebody who did? And what does your firewood honestly look like? Are you a year ahead drying it proper, or have you been burning it green and never knew the danger until today? I read every single one of these, and the stories you all share teach the new folks more than I ever could. Next time, since we have been talking about getting the most out of your wood and your stove, I'm going to show you the old way my people set a fire and build a room, so that 1 armload of good dry wood warms a whole house all night long with none of the waste and none of the danger. It is the natural next step after today. Until then, burn dry, burn hot, look up your chimney, and remember, the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.